I'm Andrea Giles, and you're listening to the Heal from Infidelity podcast, episode number 125, Intrusive Thoughts, Part 2. Hello, and welcome to the Heal from Infidelity podcast, where courageous women learn not only to heal from their spouse's betrayal, but to become the boldest, truest, most decisive, and confident versions of themselves ever. If you know there's more for you than the life you're currently living, but don't quite know how to get there, you are in the right place. Stick around to learn how to create a life that will knock your own socks off. Is it possible? It is, and I'm here to show you how. I'm your host, Andrea Giles. Are you ready? Let's dive in. Hello, everybody. I'm back today with more about intrusive thoughts. Before I dive into what I'm going to cover today, I just want to remind you that the doors are open literally just for a few more days before we begin my new program, Get Your Life Back After Infidelity. It begins on September 25th. So if you are listening to this on the day that it comes out and you are still interested in joining, you can go to the show notes, click on the link to schedule a call with me, and we'll see if we can get you going. Okay, let's go. Intrusive Thoughts, Part 2. After I recorded the last episode, I had some more thoughts and ideas for you that I wanted to share. I know that this topic is one that is just really difficult. It's really difficult for most of the people that I work with. I get emails, I get messages saying, I just don't know how to stop. I don't know how to not think about them together. I don't know how to not imagine them being together or where he was and what he was doing and on and on and on. It can go on and on and on, right? And so I recorded the last one, and since then, I just have more that I'd like to add in hopes that it will be even more helpful to you, okay? There are two main points that I'm going to make today. They both do build on some of the things that I shared last week, but I'll be expanding on them. Okay. Point number one, intrusive thoughts often turn into obsessive thoughts, which can turn into ruminating, going round and round and round in our minds, right? Stopping the ruminating and obsessing requires the betrayed partner to get out of the past and into the present. Intrusive thoughts often present as thoughts that go round and round in our brain that we can get trapped in. And they are often focused on things that happened or didn't happen, memories, worries, and fears. If you look at the last time you had an intrusive thought, my guess is that it had to do with something in your past. This is not to say it can't be useful to go to those places. Sometimes it is, but not always. When we stay in a place of rumination and don't step into the present and take bold actions, which we'll talk about in a bit, we just feel like the vicious cycle will never end and nothing ever changes. It also halts our own development. Okay, I'm going to expand on that as well. It halts our development. It keeps our focus on the other person rather than giving ourselves the love and attention that we deserve. And it also takes the focus off of what we need to actually heal. Okay, when we are hanging out with intrusive thoughts, we're internalizing a lot of pain. We're keeping a lot of pain inside. And often when we keep it inside, it festers. It's ripe ground for festering, okay? My second point is that sometimes the intrusive thoughts come up to show us open loops that need to be closed. I'm going to give you an example. I love what I do, and I am dedicated to grow always, to be an expert, to be the best at what I do, or one of the best, to really know what I'm talking about so I can bring my listeners and clients the best, okay? In this, I am constantly pushing my own education and growth so I can bring you cutting edge information, high level coaching, pushing myself to show up for you as the best version of me. I often put myself in rooms where I can learn from other people in the field who maybe have been practicing for 20 years or who have an angle on different things that I want to learn more about. And in a recent training I participated in, I learned from somebody named Ellen Bader, and I'm going to be talking more about her work soon. Ellen is a long time therapist that trains other therapists and coaches, and she has a lot of expertise around infidelity. So I have been studying with her, and in this training that I did with her, she showed us a session where she was coaching another couple. And this couple had a situation where the husband had been having an affair for 4.5 years with their nanny. She talked with the wife, and then she talked with the husband, and she asked the wife what was on her mind. What do you want to know? And she talked about how she just cannot stop thinking about it. And she said, thinking about what? And she said, I want to know. And then she listed off all these things rapid fire of what she wants to know. And then Ellen said, okay, pick one thing. What do you want to know? Like, what's one thing you really want to know? And one of the things she mentioned was that she wanted to know if her husband had been intimate with the nanny while the nanny was supposed to be watching their children and the children were at the home. When she mentioned these things to Ellen, the husband just sat there silently. You could tell he was very uncomfortable, as you can imagine. Then she said, she said to the woman, I want you to ask your husband that one question. So up until this point, this woman had been allowing these thoughts to just run the show. Very intrusive, very loud, lots of rumination, right? And she said, right now, I want you to turn to him and I want you to ask that question. And so her asking, of course, brought this tension, right? And you could see the husband's hands fidgeting, and you could kind of tell by his body language what the answer was going to be. And she directly asked, and then he sat there fidgeting for a while, and then he finally said yes. And anyway, what happened in this example is that she had been letting those questions rob her peace, completely rob her peace. And she was able to take that internal rumination and externalize it, put it outside her, put that energy outside her by asking very clear, direct questions, a question, which she then got an answer to right there in the session. Now, you might ask, why didn't she ask before? There's a lot of reasons why she possibly might not have asked before. One, she may have been afraid of the answer, right? She might have been afraid of the answer because of the emotion that inevitably would come up when she heard the answer. That might have seemed very scary. She may have kind of tiptoed around it, like, you probably did this or that. You probably did that, without being direct about it, because sometimes we don't trust ourselves enough to ask in a really direct, powerful way without emotionally falling apart. Sometimes we're dealing with somebody who, when we do ask direct questions, they fall apart or get really defensive, aggressive, or turn to shame. Oh, I'm just a loser, right? I'm such a terrible person. And you don't get an answer from them anyway, right? Some of us are very highly conflict avoidant and don't like the tension that arises when we talk about infidelity. So we'd rather just avoid it. But avoiding the questions was creating all kinds of chaos and pain for her, as well as a lack of information, right? She was missing this information. She didn't know a lot of things. Her own development. I mentioned before about how sometimes staying in intrusive thoughts can stunt our own development. And she was able to develop and grow in this situation by managing her own anxieties and fears around asking first and hearing the truth. She then had new information that could help her make clearer decisions moving forward by first learning to not run from the inevitable discomfort of bringing it up, okay? In early stages after the discovery of infidelity, we might want to hurry and rush past this part. In reality, it can be too soon to really step fully into the present and get out of intrusive thoughts. There's still new information to be gathered at the beginning. There's still data to collect. You're still getting your bearings and still processing some pretty intense emotions, right? but you can still use those emotions and questions to drive forward the things that you need to know. Sometimes you can feel intense anger, and that anger can sometimes drive us forward to have the courage to ask the questions. Okay. And then the questions you have can serve as a roadmap toward you having a more complete understanding of what happened so you can make the most wise decision moving forward. Now, when is it time to practice discipline and actively step into the present and choose not to allow your thoughts to run wild? For one, if you already have a lot of data, but your mind always is going to wanting to check his phone, wanting to go look on the computer in the middle of the night. Ellen Bader calls this pain shopping. Okay. This happens when you want to remind yourself of how hurt you are, how much damage was done, how much you can't trust him, etc. It can involve searching for more texts or images to remind yourself how hurt you are and how awful they are. There's nothing good that comes from going down this path. It just leads to your own suffering. Unfortunately, some of this involves trial and error. For example, you may notice patterns within yourself where you have a certain thought pop in your head, and then you start really ruminating on that thought. It gets more and more uncomfortable. You find yourself in a rage. You're just so upset. And in the end, it takes a couple days for you to kind of metabolize all of that intense emotion and get back to a baseline. But at the end of it all, you can look back and go, okay, when I follow that pattern, it never leads me anywhere good. It always takes me down. Nothing good comes from it. I need to try something else next time. And you can just get wiser and know for yourself which thought processes are dead ends. And then you can decide to go somewhere else with your thoughts, okay? So to wrap this up, intrusive thoughts can become obsessive thoughts. Stopping obsessing requires getting out of the past and into what is actually happening. Sometimes we do need to look at the past. Sometimes we need to get information from the past. But once we have that information, we need to stay in what is true today. What is true now? Looking at what is and asking for the details that will help you to know what is. It requires looking deeper into yourself and getting better at asking good questions of yourself first. What am I trying to find out here? When I have that information, how will it be useful to me? How do I think I'll feel when I have that information? When you do address what the thoughts are about, closing those open loops require digging deep and looking at what data is missing, or letting go of the things that you will never know. There will be some things that you will never know. And part of easing the anxiety around intrusive thoughts and part of the development here, the personal development, is growing your ability and tolerance to some ambiguity, meaning there is going to be some gray area here, some things that you will never have a very, very clear picture of. Because you weren't there, right? You weren't there. You might have texts, you might have pictures, you might have the things that you're being told about it, but in reality, you were not privy to every conversation, to every interaction, to every meeting, right? And you can make yourself crazy trying to go there in your mind and piece those things together. That once you have a full enough picture of kind of what happened, the depth of it, the lengths that he may have gone to lie to you. When you have a better idea of that, then you will have enough to kind of set down those things that are more gray. And the more that you can grow your tolerance to that, the more you'll be able to move forward. Okay? And sometimes, my friends, it may be coming to terms that you may be with someone who has no intention of being fully honest with you, and that it may be best not to stay with them. That is the case for some. That was the case for me in my first marriage. That's why I left, because it was a dead end. He was not interested in being truthful with me. I want to remind you, my friends, that you have power here, and I invite you to use it. You're not a victim to these powerful thoughts that seem to take over you. You are the boss. You are the boss. You're the boss of your own mind. You can turn this around. You got this. Okay. I hope that you found this episode useful. If you found it useful, I invite you to go into wherever you listen to this podcast and be sure to leave a review. It takes about 1 to 2 minutes. It sure means the world to me. And I will see you next time. Thank you so much. Bye-bye. Thank you for listening to the Heal from Infidelity podcast. If you would like to be kept in the know about upcoming free classes, new podcast episodes, and other ways of working with me, go subscribe to my weekly email. You can subscribe at AndreaGiles.com/lies-about-infidelity/. Again, it's AndreaGiles.com/lies-about-infidelity/. I will see you next time.